Welcome to Cleveland TV, transmitting from London. Your host this afternoon, it's an afternoon day in London, is Alex Oluwole Ajala. I have a very important guest who will throw light into a lot of things that have been happening in our country, Nigeria. Did I say our country? Because along the line, I as Ajala do not really recognize our place as my country. I find myself as part of the country. So I have with me a very eminent person in the name of Tony Nnadi. I don't have to introduce him too much, but everybody knows his role. He has been the one who brought up to the focus of everyone about the 1999 Constitution, which he had gotten for us a fourth Majeure about the fact that that is an illegal constitution. And other things have happened. He has also been the leader of the Lower Niger people set up in the United States and a very important person in that area. And I want to express that he's a very, very learned legal practitioner known all over the world. He's done a lot for us, and we want to hear from him. And before we go on with the interview, I want us to listen to one of the recordings, a video recordings of his work earlier in the year. So up to the studio now, I want this video to be played. So we take it from there later on after the playing of the interview, the video. Once again, I want to, before the playing of the video, I want to welcome my guest, Tony Nnadi. Do you have anything to tell the audience and what you have to present this afternoon?
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this August gathering. We are all witness to what Nigeria has become and how the majority of the constituent components have become fed up with the union of death that Nigeria has become for everybody, and we've succeeded in the intervention by which we are isolating the source of the problem, the Fulani ethnic agenda, and the constitution by which they are able to hold these 300-something nationalities, including the Yoruba, down in the union of master and servant. And so our mission this afternoon is to acquaint us with where that intervention has gone to and what is left for us to finish with extricating ourselves from that union of death. I believe at the close of proceedings, we will all be much clearer on the pathway to our freedom, which had already taken 22 years to come to where it is now. We're now at the enforcement stage. The consensus has been built, and the enforcement has been rolled out since December of 2020. And now we are coming today to bring our people up to date on where that whole engagement has gone. But victory is in sight, and I believe we'll be much happier at the end than this moment. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very brief introduction to the program today. And I believe I ascribe to your last statement, victory is in sight. And so over to the studio for the video. Thank you.
Yes, next in our alert series, and these are extraordinary alerts now, extraordinarily urgent alerts. The one that everybody must put aside what they were thinking before now and evaluate is the 2023 election. the centrality of the 2023 election in this union dispute. What is it about the 2023 election that connects with the terror we are seeing? What is it about 2023 election that connects with the constitution which we have already defeated, but which some people are trying to drag us to go to revalidate in some way by way of election? And so there's a triangle there in which the two sides, according to this map, are on two opposite sides in the battlefield we are caught in, the battlefield called Nigeria. From where things are, the constitution that enabled the caliphate owners of Nigeria, the constitution that seized all the assets of everybody by way of the 68 items on the exclusive list, the economic assets, the constitution that confiscated the guns in the land into the hands of an illicit federal government, now hijacked by the Fulani, the constitution that has our signature as authorization for the union itself, in which, in the preamble, let the lawyers in the land listen carefully. Let those who know where to find them, ask them, confront them with this video and ask them whether it's not so. The senior advocates, the professors of law, and all of those who go running their mouth all over the place about free and fair election. The NGO people, let people confront them with these revelations. The question of whether we have submitted our lands and our people into the Union of Nigeria as defined by the 1999 Constitution, as claimed in that preamble, is what is central in this union dispute. Because we say we have not met, we have not agreed to form a union, and we've not written any constitution as claimed in the preamble to the 1999 Constitution, because that is what is holding onto our land in the name of a federal government of Nigeria, in the name of the Federation of Nigeria that died in 1966. It is that preamble to that constitution that is holding our various lands into the union that the Fulani is now about to, trying to appropriate for themselves, albeit in our name. So, if it is that constitution that is responsible for all of that, for locking us down into a union of death, for seizing all our economic assets, for confiscating all the guns and putting in the hands of those who are bent on exterminating us, for making it impossible for us to generate electricity for ourselves or build our infrastructure by ourselves, that make it impossible for us to elect who will govern us, so that people in Abuja pretending to be INEC can decide for everybody what will happen in every locality. That is what that constitution is doing. And the intervention of this Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, which began right after Nadeko, playing out as Pronaco at the point we were having a meeting of the nationalities to say, look, let us put aside all of what happened before and agree. 2005, 2006, Buhari was part of the Fulani delegation that came to that discussion. 164 ethnic delegations, sitting for 2 years. We sat in Lagos, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Jos, Kano, and back in Lagos at plenaries. There's nobody among those who are parading themselves in Abuja that they didn't get involved at one point or the other, and the US and EU sent observer missions in all those times. We called a meeting of the owners of Nigeria to decide whether we want to carry on in the union, and if we say yes, on what terms. And it had an outcome. So when you hear about NINAS, it is the culmination of all those years, almost 22 years of continuous action involving large numbers of people, cutting across all the ethnic, identifiable ethnic nations across Nigeria, the ones who are locked in here by the mischief of 1914, by the British in their colonial venture. And it is in our collective quest to rescue ourselves from the worse than apartheid union Nigeria has become for all of us, the Fulani imposed constitution of Nigeria is why we are slaves in our land, is why we are being killed, is why we are being impoverished to become the global poverty capital for a country as endowed as we are. That constitution is the reason why our people are living in exile, economic exile all across the world. Go to the US, go to Asia, go to Europe. It is that constitution that makes life impossible here. And so our intervention was to work out the alternative to it. Since it is our signature that was implanted on it, again illicitly, by the people who imposed it by decree, Absalom Abaka and his co-travelers in 1999. And so, having done all of what we did from after Nadeko, by way of Pronaco, the MNN that went to court in 2007, to provide a framework within which Nigeria could ease out that constitution and get the owners of the land to decide where they want to go with their sovereignties. We went on from there to the joint multi-regional actions that began with the solemn assemblies to repudiate that constitution formally after we had gone to court in 2007 to say we did not make that constitution. And if you file such a case after having a countrywide meeting, by the way, at Pronaco, all the groups that were already carrying arms against the Nigerian state, Asari Dokuba and his Niger Delta Volunteer Force, the Guardian Adams and his OPC, the Masob of Wazirika of the time, and all kinds of other groups in between that were not too well known, all the groups that were carrying arms were persuaded by that process to come put their guns aside to discuss with the rest of Nigeria for what we do with our union that was failing. And so, what government could not do in calling a meeting that will discuss everything, starting with the first question of whether we want to carry on in the union, we didn't make. You know, we were able to do it. And the consensus we built from there became basis of now launching an attack on the foundation of that constitution by which we have been enslaved, the 1999 constitution. That attack was rolled out in the May of 2007 with plaintiffs that included Nohoro and Sisiono and Ojoko, later joined by Shoyinka and all kinds of others, Bishop Bonigi, Bankole Oki, the senior advocate, and the two persons that were being held for treason at the time, Asari Dokuba and Wazirike, by Obasanjo, who grabbed them at the time. So we launched a formal engagement against that constitution so that we can ease it out like South Africa eased out the apartheid constitution. But those who felt they had all the guns and they could have their way and force everybody around, insisted that it would not be addressed. They wobbled on to elections. And so we told the nationalities to go and make their constitutions ready, because when it comes to enforcement, the majority, and who is this majority? The whole of the South, the whole of the Middle Belt is in this alliance. I'm addressing this, I'm addressing us now in my capacity as co-convener of NINAS, the Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, the platform, the aegis under which all of us are struggling to retrieve our sovereignties that have been hijacked by this illicit federal government in which we have no input across the three arms, across all the points of control, because the constitutional arrangements that will have guaranteed that have been torn away, have been overtaken since 1966, 67. And so we come down to the solemn assemblies. I'm just letting us know what this NINAS is. NINAS didn't just come up 2 days ago. It's the culmination of a 22-year process that involved the peoples of the country across the length and breadth, including those who are carrying arms, that involved all of the international stakeholders, the owners of Shell and Mobil, because if it becomes a boxing bout, of course they will have to be called in. We saw it in 1967 to 1970, that they came to the battlefield. Whatever they did then, of course that was then. Now we have gone round to lay it before everybody. And so we got the nationalities in these three blocks we saw here. The Yoruba block here, the Lower Niger block here involving the South, South, and Southeast as ethnic nationalities, and the middle belt in all of this, minus the ones who have seceded from our secular union, that have embraced the caliphate, that has embraced Sharia. So it is in this formation of 1, 2, 3 that we have this alliance, each repudiating by solemn assembly the 1999 Constitution for themselves. 27th of April 2015 was when it happened in Port Harcourt. Go to YouTube today, click Solemn Assembly of the Peoples of the Lower Niger. You will see when they came forward to say they are no longer going to live with this. The one of the Yoruba took place on the 7th of September in 2017 at Adamasingba Stadium. Their governors were all there, their traditional rulers were there, and all kinds of their chief political actors. The stadium was filled. That was the day the Yoruba told the global community they will not proceed with that fraud of a constitution. On the 18th of July in 2018, the Middle Belt gathered in Makurdi and did the same. So with the three repudiating the 1999 Constitution as basis of union, at a time the Sharia belt had seceded from the secular union we thought we were building. We're not, they've exercised their own right to self-determination a long time ago. They just regrouped and are trying to conquer us afresh, away from the constitution that we have defeated. What the reason for this broadcast is to let us know that that constitution has been completely defeated by the coordinated actions of the owners of the sovereignties that have been hijacked and confiscated by that constitution. Because it was after these three blocks had repudiated in response to the secession of the bloc that imposed Sharia in defiance and negation of our, of the union agreement that was already disputed. And so we now moved on to what we call the Freedom Park Proclamation, in which we notified the global community that matters have come to where we are going to have to, save ourselves from death. And it was from there that we moved on to the constitutional force majeure of December 16, 2020. That constitutional force majeure is an ongoing thing until it gets to its destination. That is, it is designed to wind down and wind up the operation of the 1999 Constitution, to terminate the union of death that it had imposed on all sides, to also provide the framework for working out peacefully the replacements, which will be in 2 stages, in which people will be voting in the first stage in referendum to recommit to a union, because the collapse of that constitution is the end of the union anchored on it. Anybody who doesn't understand this should go and ask Awalu Yadudu, the quota professor, that raised alarm in middle of 2020 that that action of force majeure was going to compromise, that was going to unhinge the legal basis of the Federation of Nigeria. Awalu Yadudu that processed that constitution for the military, for the Absalom Abaka, who was, he used to be, what's it called, Abacha's chief legal advisor. Awalu Yadudu, to tell us when we say we have defeated the 1999 Constitution, Awalu Yadudu got wind of the constitutional force majeure before it was activated. He went to the media. Guardian newspaper reported, I'm sure if somebody researches, they will find it. Guardian newspaper reported that Professor Awalu Yadudu, the chief midwife of the 1999 Constitution, did raise alarm that if this constitutional force majeure thing is allowed to go, he was hoping that government could go and stop the people, the owners of the land, from exercising their sovereignty. He was saying that if that constitutional force majeure was allowed to go on, that it will unhinge the legal basis of the Federation of Nigeria. I'm reporting to you now as co-convener of that NINAS with a whole number of people. You saw their names in the advertorial we took when we put out the 128 statesmen cutting across the length and breadth of this alliance territory. I report to you today that that force majeure was rolled out. It has met all the objectives. The consultations that needed to be done had been done. All of the preparations that had to be done in one place or the other are in place. And the legal basis of the Federation of Nigeria stands unhinged. And that brings us to the point where we now begin to ask what will happen. We are not anarchists, and therefore, in that force majeure, we also made provision for the transition. We say, look, those in government house are not our problem at all. It is the constitution by which our lives are being ruined that we are quarreling with. That's what we have been working to dislodge. And we've come to the point where there's consensus to get rid of it. The few people that gather to swear to defend and uphold that constitution, waving one party flag or the other, are just too few. They are not the kind of people you begin to worry about what to do, because the owners of the land are going to ignore them and take their land. If you now stand in Ibadan and say it is because somebody in Abuja told you that that constitution is the only thing that will prevail, the Ibadan people are going to show you what they do with people like you if you are from their part. The same thing as in Ijo, the same thing as in Igbo, the same thing as Thief. We are proud of Governor Samuel Otom in what he's been able to do in the place, in recognizing that that constitution is dead, and that the reason they could not carry arms before is defeated, and therefore signing into law, a bill that had been approved by his assembly for people who are surrounded by armed invaders to carry arms. So the Benue is able to issue firearms. All the governors of the South and Middle Belt, anybody who is not doing exactly the same thing, to pass a law, send a bill to your state assembly, get them to pass the bill, sign that bill into law, to issue firearms to those, especially the states that have passed anti-open grazing bill into law. By what means are you going to enforce all of that if you do not, give the people who are going to enforce it guns to, the weapons to match the kind of people, the kind of weapons that those who are invading them are carrying? So it is within your reach now. That constitution is dead and defeated. Now, where does 2023 election come in this discussion? Those that title deed by which these invaders are prevailing, by which that illicit federal government is now the owner of everybody and their assets, holding on to the oil and gas assets of the Niger Delta, holding on to the ports of Lagos and other things, that constitution having been defeated, these people who want to reconquer you are looking for more time. They have to get more time by all means to continue what they are doing to get somewhere. They've not gotten anywhere now. They are just being stymied. They've been stopped by this campaign of organizing those who own the sovereignty. That's why they've not been able to succeed. And so they require more time. And their only hope for getting that more time is to drag us to another election under this constitution we have repudiated, we've defeated. And so for them, if they're able to drag us towards that election, even now, getting people to be buying form and waving flag of whose turn it is or whose turn it is not, if they're able to bring us to if we're able to put us in that tunnel of going to election, they already bought the balance of this. That's the 1 year to the time that the election should be happening next year to continue their onslaught. They are not stopping in the onslaught. They are not stopping in the invasion. They are not stopping in the attempt to conquer us by the invasion. They also have another plan B. In one of the recent broadcasts alerts, we talked about plan A, plan B, and plan C, in which the election is plan C. The election is playing two roles: to keep the South and Middle Belt busy, talking about who will govern, whereas the invasion is continuing. We saw it in the train attack, and what they say the land has to be handed over to them now. They've become impatient. They are feeling defrauded. And so it is only in dragging us to that, pushing us into that tunnel of election. I think it was yesterday that I saw on TV, what's his name, the one chairing INEC for them, Mahmoud, or whatever he's called, saying that no matter what the situation is, they will go to election. That caliphate is desperate now to go to election. I also saw the National Security Advisor trying to lend Monguno also, trying to lend his voice to it, that it is the duty of all of us to make sure we go to election. Again, we remember Baba Ahmed. These are now the caliphate proprietors of what they are doing. Akim Baba Ahmed was telling us the other time that it is only by all of us joining hands that we can get to election that will ease out the Buhari who doesn't agree with the restructuring. These are all gimmicks. The caliphate wants to get more time to continue their conquest. The outcome of the election is already predetermined. They don't even know how to get there based on what is coming at them from all sides. They didn't anticipate anybody could defeat that constitution. They didn't anticipate anybody could organize the kind of alliance we have now. They didn't anticipate anybody could get to Washington and push them out from where they used to be in the inner workings of things. They are now strangers in that place. And so the other side of the coin is that the people who have done all these efforts to defeat that title deed, that constitution by which they are bound into Nigeria and made slaves there by this caliphate, they also have a chance to finally get rid of this enslavement. If the only task is stopping the journey to that election as a demonstration of their resolve, as a demonstration of their rejection of that constitution. The international community is waiting for us to do just that. There's no other thing left between us and our freedom. It is to demonstrate by rejecting the journey to election in 2023 that we have repudiated that constitution and we're interested, we're desirous of, we're now very anxious to recover our sovereignty. If we don't, these people to whom these lands have been promised for helping kill off other people to bring those who came to power in 2015, these people are waiting in your forests all the way to Boni, all the way to Badagry. From the point they entered in the upper part, they have mapped out all the Nigerian land. The Fulani from Mali, the Fulani from Senegal, they all know where have been mapped. The people you call Fulani herdsmen are the advanced teams, that came ahead of the others to kill off the owners and become the new owners. And that was why the documentation to make them citizen and to make them indigene after 5 years were all being smuggled through the National Assembly of Lawan and Bajami Avila, his handmaid. And so it is our task now to stop that journey so that that constitution will go down. If you want to research how it will all happen, set for what we call domino 2. You see the graphics that the rejection of the constitution is now supported by rejection of election. If that election is taken down, the constitution goes down and the union standing on it goes, and we go to transition. Everything we are doing now will end in transition. That's why we put the 5-point proposition in that constitutional force majeure. I would think the summary of it all is that if we join, especially the politicians from the South and Middle Belt, across party lines, we are not talking about PDP and APC now. If we join, if the South and the Middle Belt will join in the journey to election, pretending they are going to get a better day tomorrow, they are just lining themselves up for extermination. If the South and Middle Belt join at the invitation of NINAS to stop the journey to election, your freedom and your sovereignty is back in your hand. The caliphate has no other opportunity, has no other mechanism for prevailing in this matter. They've been defeated comprehensively. Their title deed is defeated, and there's nothing they can do about it. Everything is now in your hand to do. Do you want to perish? Then go to election. Do you want to survive? Then stop the journey to the election. We'll have to end it there. Thank you.
Welcome to this program this afternoon. This Cleveland TV is transmitting worldwide online. Your host is Alex Oluwole Ajala. And with me in the studio is an eminent lawyer of many years service, well known worldwide, has been into several institutions, of which I'm not going to bore you about. But one thing I want you to know, we are in good hands to listen to the one and only Tony Nnadi. Welcome to the studio. Can you,
Thank you, sir.
say a word or two to my listeners?
Welcome again, listeners. It's a great pleasure to be in audience with you this afternoon from Nigeria. And I believe we will be glad that we came, because it's just a matter of getting a bearing for where things are as at now in our undertaking for extricating ourselves from the union of death that Nigeria has become against all of us. Welcome once more.
To take you on one of an earlier position you held. Apart from, there are many, and I think as the events unfold, I say this is why I respect people who are ready to look deeper into positions over and over and then change them for a better level. And I appreciate that. You were once a proponent of restructuring. What do you see about restructuring, and how do you think it can play out in this current situation?
No, it will be a miss. I want to see myself. It will be a misrepresentation to say that I was once a proponent of restructuring. Congress.
To want to for ourselves, particularly um, autonomy with whether within or without Nigeria, where we have to control our resources for development purpose. Those are very beautiful things you have championed, and which I would support. So sorry for.
Thank you. Let's get it. So we don't call it names that put it in straitjacket situation, because that's part of what there's a huge propaganda by people who have other designs, but who come to masquerade in our midst as being part of what we are doing, and then they craft some narrative and hang it, on the project, then spread it everywhere, and people who should have been listening to us were now, taken away in a different direction. What we set out to do from the beginning, I'm sure you have some images that include the constitution that is cancelled. That's the summary of what we set out to do from the beginning. And I was already a lawyer of many years before we set this process in motion. And what was it? I was involved with NADECO. At the time, the struggle was to get the soldiers out of Nigeria. Wasn't working. The soldiers weren't improving it, because it was working a lot better before they came. And the longer they stayed, the worse things became. And so the first task of the time then became how to get rid of the soldiers from government house, so that those who are trained in statecraft can get back to the construction of their young federation that has more or less had an accident, a very big accident, 66, 67, that became war. And that was the transaction of NADECO. NADECO succeeded in getting the soldiers out of the government house by 1998, of course, with the divine the providential intervention that saw the back of the then military strongman Sani Abacha. Then Absalom came in to hand over, to work out the process for handing over. Those who knew, like Nohoro, those who knew what changed in the mid-60s from the agreement, the union agreement that was written in Lancaster House through the period of 1951 to 59, you know, they knew that they needed to go back to those something close to those constitutions that would guarantee the autonomy levels that made those those regions work at the time. But some of their, you know, some of their, I would say, compatriots didn't see it that way. They say, oh, let the soldiers not find any reason to stay back. Let's go in there and rework it all. They discussed with Absalom, and they went into election without addressing the question of the constitution by which that democracy will be built. And so it was in bringing back, it was in that kind of dubious discussion that these caliphate operators of Nigeria succeeded in bringing back the 1979 constitution, which, by the way, was not a product of the people. Our people have to get that very clear. The 1979 constitution, much as they formed a constituent assembly of the time, by the time the constituent assembly finished its business, it wasn't what came out from the constituent assembly that became constitution 79.
Because you on that point, because I was at home then. I think to have a constitution to sort of bring people into a political accommodation with each other, it should have been published in the various languages for people to see. And there were no comments by anybody. It was just like you said. It was just taking wholesale.
It goes beyond. It goes far beyond that. It goes far beyond that. First, who has authority to make constitution? Constitution means what it says. To constitute, it means union agreement. By what arrangement is Yoruba land now to become part of this political union called Nigeria? 60 million people. It's not something you call a few of your friends together to go to beer parlor and begin to discuss. It must be Yoruba. It's called constituent powers. It must be a body with constituent powers that will now come together. Ijo, bring your land and your people. Ogoni, bring your land and your people. Igbo, bring your land and your people. Yoruba, bring your land and your people. Tiv, Berom, all of them and everything in between. That is the meeting that was the kind of meeting that happened between 1951 and 1959. And then when those things had gone bad, let me run to where people can see what we are dealing with, because a lot of assumptions have been made that it is just a matter of bringing a few experts. Writing the constitution is the second leg of the transaction. The first leg of the transaction is to agree to be in union. That's why you come to the preamble of the constitution. It begins with, we the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having solemnly and firmly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible. Is that not the contents of the preamble to the constitution of today and the one of 79? Now, that is one claim. Then the second part of the claim is that we therefore do hereby make, enact, and give unto ourselves the following constitution. That is, that preamble, the wordings of that preamble are coming out from the mouth of the Yoruba, the mouth of the Ijo, the mouth of the Beron, and the Jukun. They are saying that all options considered for how we could do with our sovereignty, we have decided to be in one political union forever called Nigeria, not to be they say indissoluble and indivisible. You know, so if you did not call a meeting of those who could actually discuss that, to commit themselves, like the people who went to Lancaster House went on behalf of Western region that could have been country of its own, Eastern region that could have gone off into independence as a country of its own, and then Northern region. If you do not call such a meeting and you then set up constituent assembly of 50 people, why did Awolowo stay away? Bankole Oki, I'm sure most of us remember him, senior advocate. Bankole Oki told me the story of how Awolowo had to stay away from that constituent assembly because Murtala Mohammed came in and commissioned the drafting of a constitution before the meeting of the owners of the sovereignties. In fact, it was the Gowon, the draft by which the Gowon wanted to work out his transition to civil rule. It was the draft Gowon commissioned, in which Hope Harriman, who was a member of that committee, 72, 73, told me this story in course of this, in course of the research and the planning for this intervention. Hope Harriman told me that he was a member of that committee that Gowon set up to craft, work out what will become the constitution by which they will hand over power, and that the instruction he gave, the mandate of that committee was to. He said that the Gowon said there was no point going to call a fresh large meeting of where shall we go from here when everybody knew what was agreed and what had gone wrong. That their mandate was to take the two sides, that everything that needed to be discussed had been discussed in the Aburi meetings. That therefore, since there was an interpretation of federal side and the Eastern region side, that their committee should please take these two interpretations and marry them in such a manner that will be acceptable to the two sides after all the war.
Points, which I want to clarity. You said about the introduction of a constitution, and then coming back to what was agreed in Aburi and some of the drafts that are already made under Gowon to be put together, then it means all these things have not really followed the due process of a legality to involve the people to decide that I want to submit my sovereignty into being part of this union, which you explained clearly.
Yes.
So right from 1951, we've been missing 53. We've been missing that track. Even I want to remind the audience from what my great guest has said. It made me to remember what I found out too, which he knows. The meeting, Lancaster House meeting, was the different regions were represented by parties, not the people. That was another great fault. Don't you agree with me? Yeah?
Yes, sir. It was deliberate from the documents we found out. The same way WikiLeaks gets as the documents. It came to where, when we couldn't find anything in our own archives, we began to search the British archives, and we went beyond the ones they had put to public, to the ones they were still keeping in what do they call it? They said classified. So we got into the classified documents and now saw that it was a deliberate design of the British to create a union of master and servant. And therefore, we were not to be on the table of discussion. They had a separate discussion going on with the caliphate. With the Sokoto, the Sokoto Caliphate got here in 1804. The British got here from the Atlantic waterfront. The Sokoto, the Fulani that came in jihad in 1804 came from the northern flank. If you go to the map of Nigeria, the place that is Sokoto now, that's where they first landed and began to expand, conquering those they could conquer, and were actually making their way southwards, which was why Ilorin became where they stopped on the side towards Lagos waterfront, and Benue became where they couldn't pass, again in the southward march. They were pushing their way to the Atlantic waterfront
with from where they had entered. Conquering the whole of West Africa. Then there was not in Nigeria anyway.
All the way. Yes, all the way to the waterfront. You remember somebody talking about dipping the Quran into the Atlantic? That was the definition of their campaign. Now, the British came in the 1860s. You remember Lagos calling that came in 1861 after Kosoko and Dosmo couldn't find common ground. Now, so the British came with their own area. Yes, the British came with their own conquest designs. The British came with their own conquest designs, and having grabbed Lagos, you saw the oil rivers protectorate and all kinds of trading treaties with the coastal states of the time. At the end of the day, by 1906, they merged the southern territories they had under their control. And again, they were interested in taking everything to the balance of where the northern, because you saw the French already took their adjoining places. The caliphate hanging in the place they hung. So the British were pushing northward to be able to take everything that was left outside where the Germans controlled the Cameroon of today. You remember it was under German control. Then the France controlled the Niger and Chad and all kinds of them. To our left, again, Benin Republic, which again, I think there was something of German. Dahomey. And so the British, in going upwards, they met these people who were coming southwards. And between the two of them, they had skirmishes. It was a fight that should have become a bigger fight. But somewhere along the line, they reasoned among themselves that we're on the same mission here, like two robbery gangs coming after the same target. Why don't we, combine forces and merge all of what we already got, organize how we share it peacefully, so that these owners of the territories don't wake up to, ourselves. So that was what became your Nigeria in 1914. The cooperation of these two invaders to now merge and share.
Will I want to, this thing you just said, it's very, very clear to me. But the construction of those boundaries, like you were trying to explain, was between Britain and France. It took them 8 years, from 1890 to 1898, before they agreed on the boundary. At some point, Sokoto Caliphate area was with the French. But the British defeated the French diplomat. Up till now, there are some documents in the same archives you're talking about the fact that the French have never forgiven Britain for taking over the lower Niger area, which included everything south of Niamey, not just the lower Niger thing, lower Niger area up to Chad. And that was the route this man took, which I think you must have got the document, Clapperton, according to you. You see, those areas.
I already talked about the. Hold on. I already talked about the French that were in control of the territories beyond the Sokoto. Somehow they had to find common ground among themselves. But the one that is critical to us is what became this Nigeria in 1914. How has it been managed to the point where we are now slaves in our own homeland? It was because the British and the Sokoto Caliphate entered into a joint venture to make it so. And so in the decolonization process, at the time the British had to go home from being in charge here, again, it wasn't a matter of, it was clear to them that as they left government house, that they needed to be in control of what was going on. So the Fulani and the rest of the Caliphate, the rest of people they put to support them in that block were made to be in charge in the kind of things they created, so that even at the point of the constituencies that became a basis of representation, they made sure that no less than 55% of all the voting power was allocated to the side with the larger landmass, and the South, because the assets they were after were in the South. If you thought oil came into the equation in 1957,
I know that.
Then you are
there was exploration before up to 1912. Before it was abandoned.
Yes.
So Owerri was the center
all kinds of things were going on.
I know that you've mentioned it sometime, but
so
I also found out Owerri was the center of the exploration.
To the troublemakers.
And some of the buildings are still there.
They didn't want to talk to the troublemakers of the South. They didn't want to talk because if you check who and who fought them off in terms of demanding independence, can you name one Northerner that was among those who fought them? Was it not Herbert Macaulay that became Azikiwe? Now Awolowo, Enohoro, Mokugo Koye, Osita Aguna. Name them. The people that put up the fight for which they now had to dress back from their colonial venture. But in dressing back, they made sure that they put structures in place that also empowered their agents, the ones who have to manage that joint venture that was not, discussed with the rest of us. So Nigeria is the criminal enterprise the world calls Nigeria today is a joint venture between the British Crown and the Sokoto Caliphate. They then document the entire thing and throw constitutions at us. Because even, like you said, the constitution that emerged as independent constitution, how much of input, how will you be discussing this kind of matter with political party? Where is the sovereignty of the people? Was it to political party that they consigned their sovereignty, or they deputized, it was just a matter of the British manipulation to get the result they wanted in the entire process.
Yeah, that's very correct. But there's something else I found out too, because like you, I've done so much research into this things, and that is good that you explained a lot to me that I now understand. But I remember in the position of Balewa in the 1953 this thing, when Little Thing said that it is the president of the British that is keeping Nigeria together. Balewa concluded that they don't want a Nigeria. You find it, if you should be in one of your documents, which maybe you skipped talking about. But at that time, Eyoita said God will punish anybody who says Nigeria should go into a free trade area. That is what generally describes in terms of politics confederation, a confederal system. That the South did not want. And I remember too from some of the articles that our people now appealed to Balewa, like you said, consensus agreement to continue Nigeria, and that they discussed, and even Awolowo said that as far as they are concerned, they want the country to stay together, while the North did not want it. But there was a consensus to retain it by convincing Balewa and Ahmadu Bello. Don't you think it's our fault? Because that was the point at which we should have stood up against what was happening. But instead, we played into their hands.
You work with the information you have. We were lucky at the time we began this search for what went wrong, that the very people who went to those discussions in Lancaster House and elsewhere were still alive. And so when we got the documents that were concealed from them, we placed them on the table. And
can you read some of them to us, please? Because I am quoting from some of the things that were said. And also, if you remember, Bode Thomas had told Awolowo in Yoruba that Awarabi Onsharawa Geje Komalo, after Balewa said what I just said, he said.
The Awolowo did not know. The Azikiwe did not know. All of those people who were speaking from our own side did not know. Sadona, what's his name? Ahmadu Bello. He was in the full knowledge of what the British were doing, because they had a separate meeting going on in the background, not known to Awolowo and Azikiwe and the rest of them from the South. Because when I confronted Enohoro, for instance, with the documents we dug out from the archives about the processes that led to 1900 up to the time the Royal Niger Company was settled by the £865,000 payment, by which the Crown took over the trading areas already secured by treaties. From that point to when they began to work things towards merging everything they were controlling all over the place. In 1906, they got to where all the treaties of the South became one Southern protectorate, and the rest of whatever they had worked out with the Sokoto Caliphate became the Northern protectorate. Now the British presiding with the Caliphate as the junior partner in that joint venture. Then the question of amalgamation, it didn't happen overnight. They began to merge their systems, the legal system, the tax systems, and all of that, by creating dual at every point in time, making different arrangements.
They use from the various British writers and even Trevor Clark, indirect rule actually started from the South. It actually, before they found it that it worked better in the North. not the South.
Yeah, I think we will get more from this meeting if we work our way quickly down to the constitution that's on the table.
Now,
I only wanted to touch on.
Having discussed that, I want to ask a question. What do you think about the current 1999 constitution? Does it, if there is rule of law in that country, does that mean that whatever election is held now is null and void? Do the people in power believe that that constitution should still be used to hold down the country after the force majeure?
We who are in that trouble, we who are in the danger of extermination from the Fulani invaders, our first task is to understand the meaning of constitution. If we understand the meaning of constitution, 60% of all our troubles will be resolved, because we will then realize that it goes beyond the document that have been printed and circulated. It goes to the question of we understand it as union agreement, in which we have submitted our sovereignty and then written the articles to govern that union. Two transactions. And that was what Bola was trying to explain when he was being confronted by those who didn't want the sovereign conference they were campaigning about. Say, what is it that this sovereign conference has to do that we cannot do as a government? Bola then said to them that there are two questions that need to be answered. First, whether the constituents want to continue in the union as one political union. That's the part they don't want to touch. That's the part they've been suppressing since after Aburi. That's the part we have now found a way around to compel a resolution of, by saying that we repudiate the constitution we didn't make. As you put our signature on a document that sees our sovereignties and our assets, and you say we made it, and then unfortunately for you, the decree number 24 by which you imposed it in 1999, which was not meant for our consumption, was printed in error into the document, because there was an express instruction in that decree number 24 for the federal government printer not to print that decree, so that the story will begin with we the people having solemnly resolved, do hereby make and give unto ourselves. And so it was in that divine error of printing that decree number 24. If anybody went out today, I've just announced to us the key to our liberation. Every other method will require so much bloodshed. But if we apply this key, nobody is going to be able to shoot at anybody until we recover this land. And it will not be a matter of many years. We already did 22 years of continuous work to bring it to where we will enforce the consensus. There's a consensus that we have managed to build quietly by getting the Yoruba to see that their sovereignty is detained from them on account of this falsehood that has their signature as validation. If they pull back that signature, and the eastern side pull back that signature, and the middle belt pull back that signature, in a venture involving 5-6 people, and then more than 3/4 of them, say no, we can't continue, and not out of sentiment. The life of that constitution is derived from the claim that we submitted our sovereignty. That's what that preamble is all about. And the contents of that constitution, which is where you now begin to see 36 states in which Fulani controls almost everything. That's why you begin to see 704 local government areas in which Kano has 44 portions, and Bayelsa, from where the money has to be taken, has only 8 portions. In which you begin to see 68 items of exclusive list, in which Yoruba land can no longer generate electricity for themselves, can no longer do the road to Ibadan from Lagos, can no longer, control the ports that is sitting on their land. 68 items can no longer police themselves, can no longer elect who will govern them. 68 items. Those are the things infused into that union agreement unilaterally by those who are now holding us by it, because each of those 68 items is like a separate chain. You have a chain, one tied to your neck, to one pillar. That is security. you have another chain tied to your waist.
Yeah.
To another pillar.
You are very
That's infrastructure.
elucid about what you just said. But if I may want to add, we
yes, sir.
I think we are guilty of one thing. Most of our people are still dancing the political death at the center, trying to go for an election or regional elections. Like you said, if we understand we can pull back our sovereignty that has been messed up in this constitution and say no until we resolve this situation, and that involves even our governors in our different states and every place. We have to
the rest
start
of us,
a parallel campaign.
The rest of us have to compel. The rest of us have to compel them. How many governors are in Yoruba land? 6 governors. How many are in the east? 5. How many are in the south? 6. Put the one of middle belt, whether they are 6 or 5 or any number. All of us who are in this alliance, we are saying that out of 36, at least 17 are in the south. There's Benue there. There's Taraba there. There's Plateau. All of those in the middle belt who have been slaughtered like ram today. If the reason the Fulani can come to your land and kill people, having already seized all your assets, your economic assets, having seized all the guns in the land, the only reason you can't touch gun now is because it is on that exclusive list that only the federal government can control gun and issue firearms. And then, but they can come to a war and enter a church and kill people. They can go to Benue and slaughter any number they like. They can go to Southern Kaduna, kill off people and take their land. If they try to resist, army will come from the air and bomb them off. That's what that constitution imposes. And so the people who are going to election, you see, as if we have nothing to do with our time now. We are talking to them, they are not listening. The young people who are going to get PVC, the constitution by which is like apartheid, this is worse than apartheid constitution. The constitution by which the winner will govern.
Desmond Tutu, during the so-called conference of reconciliation, she went back with an air of fear and despondence that Nigeria's apartheid is worse than the South African apartheid, what he saw on the ground. And that's exactly what you just said again. We will have to.
That's what we're dealing with. But our people don't understand it in that manner. They think that Nigeria is sacrosanct. Somehow, I think there's also, and we must take this very seriously, I think there's an occultic manipulation, because all these killings going on, somebody may say, oh, don't be fetish. All these killings going on, they not only kill people, you see that there are organs they cut off. Most of the killings they do, there are things they do with it. And for people who have taken the trouble to research further into all of that, there's an occultic manipulation that have put our people with all their education and all their exposure, that these people who are not fit to clean their shoes have been holding them down for 62 years, unchallenged. This is the first time they have been challenged. And let me tell us what we did differently. First, we dressed back from the whole commotion to research, because any ailment you have to treat, you first need to find out what exactly is that ailment. Our people are not used to that. They just begin to treat the symptoms they see. So we dug into we tried to find out, and we discovered that it was a British design to keep us as slaves, to be controlled by this caliphate on their behalf. That joint venture is still selling 3 million barrels of crude oil every day and sharing the money over the heads of the owners. That joint venture is controlling over 2 trillion they make from the Lagos port every year. No Yoruba man had ever been qualified to be Controller General of Customs to collect such a huge amount of revenue. All the money that Lagos gets from the federal allocation, the so-called oil money, don't even come to anywhere near 10% of what Nigeria is taking from controlling that port. And why are they in control of that port? Because ports and maritime assets are on that
exclusive. And a portion of the port is sold to one individual.
Are you talking about selling? Allocated. They gave half of that port because they are seized it by the instrumentality of that constitution. They gave it to Dangote. Dangote doesn't deal with customs except at his convenience. They come to his office,
in and out
for what he has recorded, How can you compete with such a person? And they come to Benue, they take the limestone there and allocate to him. He becomes Africa's richest man. The balance of the limestone is given to his cousin, the one that does Boer cement. This is now the key economic assets are seized by the instrumentality of that constitution. What can you do without the money to function? Awolowo didn't have such a constitution. Awolowo was in charge of a western region that owned its assets.
That's correct.
Obara was in charge of eastern region that owned its assets. That was why they were able to prioritize, and they were able to give education and all the infrastructure you saw them building, and the industry you saw them setting up. And now all of those things have been thrown away, and the people who are bent on building something was an apartheid. In apartheid South Africa, the Boers were at least developing Johannesburg as London was being built. They had something, they were building a society, only that it excluded the owners, the black owners of the place. But they were setting up systems. They had a judicial system, they had a legal system, they had they were industrializing. Were they not manufacturing arms? We don't have what South Africa had, for which they built a society that will be exporting all kinds of goods to the rest of the world. These ones are just destroying what they found here. What electricity have they given us? Beyond 2,000 or 3,000 megawatts of electricity for 200 million people, and we're still discussing it. Why do we have to share 3,000 megawatts of electricity for 200 million people? Because that same constitution puts electricity generation and transmission on the exclusive list. They now say, oh, they put it on a concurrent. What does that translate to? If the federal government has an interest in whatever you want to do about electricity, you have to dress back. That's what concurrently is also. So everything that controls development, the ownership of assets, and the power to work those assets. Imagine something like petroleum, simple petroleum, that is just a matter of extracting at various temperatures what you can take from crude oil. We have 3 million barrels being sold every day to the rest of the world. What we need to satisfy local consumption does not come to more than 10%. I'm talking about this now as one who came out from the oil industry. I left the oil industry in 1998. I was directly involved in how it was being done. And so we have 3 million barrels of crude oil because it is on the exclusive list. And nothing is going to change anything about petroleum products availability, except that constitution goes down. Nothing is going to change what you see in security today, except that constitution goes down. Nothing is going to change in the infrastructure, the rest of the infrastructure you see that is in decay, except that constitution goes down. Nothing is going to change in the electoral process in which people sit in Abuja and decide who is going to govern Oyo and Ekiti until that constitution goes down. And so there are 68 such items. So if your assets are taken from you by people who just inserted your signature on a title document, and then the guns in the land are kept in their hands so that you don't resist. Anything you say, you can be criminalized. They're in control of the 3 arms of government. They're in control of all the armed services. They're in control of all the key points of control of the things that make the economy work or not work. All the licensing, anything you need to do, they have to authorize you. All because of that constitution. And it is our signature that is sustaining that constitution. And we're going, every 4 years, we go with them to election. They wave PDP or APC or AD, and we have renegades from the South and Middle Belt who are not prepared to listen to this enslavement, this bondage, leading the way. Oh, let's go, it's our turn. Turn to do what? Turn to preside over this kind of criminality? Because even if you became president, was Obasanjo not president for 8 years? Did it change the status of the Yoruba in the equation? Did Yoruba land recover the port of Lagos? Did Yoruba recover the bitumen of Ondo? Did Yoruba recover the right to generate electricity for themselves? Did Yoruba recover the right to defend themselves from people who are invading them and killing them? Jonathan became president. There was no rule of law there was no rule of law that was possible. You can't have rule of law with apartheid constitution. it already excluded the concept of rule of law. And that was my quarrel with the Bar Association in Nigeria. They were the first set of people who were approached to say, look, if there was an epidemic, a health challenge, the whole country would be looking up to doctors and pharmacists to lead the way for searching for answers. We saw Ebola, we saw Corona. Now, this kind of epidemic in which the constitution of Nigeria had been toppled and replaced by brigandage, by an invading community. The Fulani are just coming into, you saw the governor of Bauchi that came on national TV to say that Fulani from all over the sub-region belong to Nigeria. They throw our borders open, they're pouring in, and as they come in, they document them. So they are all Nigerian citizens. If not for our intervention, if not for what NINAS did in the last amendment they were doing, they were also going to take it further to give them indigenship. So you are in the UK now. The Fulani that came to your community some 5 years ago and would have been qualified if that amendment was not blocked by us, would have been qualified to be registered as indigenous. Now, in the name of local government autonomy, Abuja will then take over, INEC will take over the conduct of elections in the local government areas. The INEC they control will be the one organizing elections across Yoruba land in the local government areas. Having first registered the Fulani as indigenous, they already gave them citizenship long time ago. But for them to become controllers of your local government, they needed to be at least indigenous to the area. And they were going to do all of that. Your traditional rulers, the stipend, the payment that the traditional rulers get every month come from 5% of what is allocated to local government areas. And so the Ruga they've been trying to set up, they already settled it that if that amendment was not blocked, they will be in charge of putting who is in charge of your local government. It could be Fulani for all you care and all the councillors. And then the traditional rulers who have to take 5%, who have to work with them. If you don't fall in line, they throw you out. Abuja is there deciding who will be the council chairman. You understand? So they are going to now take the choices of your land to set up their Ruga. That was what we were within 1 week of this possibility in that amendment that NINAS had to shut down the day after they voted. That's how close we came to losing our entire land, because the 7 and 74 local government areas will, in a matter of, INEC will just announce that all the governors who had not conducted the election in local government areas where we can't continue like this, rule of law, accountability, they will call it one name or the other, then they will conduct the elections. Then they will select who will micromanage you to the community level. There was where they were going. And it was all a part of this scheme to take over everybody's land. It is this constitution that empowered them to do all of what they are doing. It is we who are allowing them, by going to election with them, to renew the life of that constitution. The constitution is renewed every 4 years by way of elections. Only political parties contest elections. Why can't the rest of us insist that our signature cannot continue to validate our damnation, and then insist that we're not going to any further national elections under that constitution? That was what the Constitutional Force Majeure rolled out on the 16th of December in 2020, set out to settle that we have endured this criminality for long enough, since 1999, that we will not go to renew the life of that constitution one more time in 2023. How many people are contesting this election that are now so overwhelming to us that the rest of us cannot stand up and tell them we can't go? Is it not cheaper for us to fight them?
Yes, if I may pause you. There are certain things you said, particularly about electricity. I studied development with particular reference to the geography of development, and which sometimes we classify as prisoners of geography. You mentioned electricity. They are in control, but and they don't allow it to flow. I will mention to all Yorubas listening to this program, it's very important you be attentive. My gentleman here, Nnadi, had exposed a lot of things, but there are some things you are sitting on and which you cannot link with what he has said about electricity. And I will remind you, Oyo Dam was finished in 1984, just before Buhari left. There's nothing to hide about it. He did not allow the continuity of uh, making it to work, to make it to come into stream. Oyo Dam had a 9 megawatt electricity power generating this possibility. And the land for which it was supposed to irrigate is over 3,000 square miles around Oyo Dam. The same thing with the Keregoj Dam that was not completed. It was started by Obasanjo. This is about the things my gentleman has been explaining. This is the time. This is the time we have to wake up. We have to campaign to take back our sovereignty. That's what he's been telling us.
You are going too
That's
far,
what
sir.
he's been telling us.
The electricity, the private, the electricity that the state government, like River State, under delay, constructed turbines, that's the capacity to generate electricity. They invested money. When you finish, because of that exclusive list, it has to be taken into the national grid. You can use from it. That's the implication of that constitution that has electricity generation and transmission. He said it's only the federal government that can generate electricity. What is there in electricity generation? But it is done to constrict and frustrate your development. And so even when you go out of your way, Lagos did a power 450 megawatt. If you go out of your way to say, okay, I need electricity very badly, then you construct the power generation facility. The power you generate is first taken into the national grid, and the Fulani will then distribute it the way they want. It happened to Lagos in Egbe. It happened to Rivers. It happened to Akwa Ibom. So many of the other states that were now halfway, midway into constructing, because they go to borrow most of these foreign loans they took in ignorance. They went about trying to build electricity facility, generation. Then the government, the one they managed to complete, is taken forcefully into the national grid, over which you have no control, because it's the Fulani that will then distribute from Oshogbo, where they switch countrywide. They're in control of the place. Go and find out. And so when you don't own your economic assets, you can't do for yourself what you need for yourself, because somebody says you can't. That's what is in that exclusive list. We're talking about the constitution by which we are held down. The shackle, the prison compound we are locked in is that constitution. That is the wall, that is the gate. Then the structures inside that constitution, dictated by this joint venture of the Caliphate and the British, is the 36 states, like the buildings inside the prison compound, or your state, Ogun State, Imo State, Abia State. Those are your blocks inside the prison compound. Then the 7 and 4 local government areas are the local government areas, that is like the rooms inside those blocks. And so the Fulani that owns the estate, they are the ones who decide what you do, what you don't do. What you do with your assets, the assets first belongs to them. That's how the Niger Delta oil and gas became the property of federal government, because oil and gas are in that exclusive list. No amount of fight of resource control will solve that problem unless that constitution goes down. They give you only what they want to give you, because they've settled the question of ownership. You saw the senator, you saw the northern fellow, the charlatan that was talking about Jigawa oil that belongs to, Bayelsa oil that will forever belong to Jigawa people. But he also goofed in saying, as long as we're in Nigeria, as long as we're in Nigeria. of us, if we go to a referendum today, over 75–80% of the indigenous nationalities are no longer willing to be in that Nigeria that is defined by this constitution. And no matter how many guns they monopolize into their hands by way of a constitution I didn't write, a constitution I didn't discuss with you, you put my signature on a document of damnation against me, and you manage to hold it together for 20 years, and you want to go to 24 years, because some P2B or some Tinubu or some whoever it is that is waving party flag with you agrees with you, I pray this matter doesn't burst out on the street. These young people that are buying, that are going to register for PVC, they are going to get to know what is going on, to open their eyes to see that it is their damnation that they are reinforcing.
To reach out to the young people about exactly what you are saying, so that they know the truth. And that's why this program is going on. If all of those who are doing online TV all over the place, just talking in every direction, we have the full dissection of what the problem is. We have the full framework of how to solve the problem. The matter is simple. In the alliance we built, if the map can be brought up, the one that has it in two parts, if that map can be brought up, the alliance we built of the South and the Middle Belt, is to isolate the monster that is tormenting us. That monster that put Awolowo in prison when he won the independence election. That monster that killed Abiola when he won the 1993 election. That monster that makes it impossible for us, that imposed this constitution that took everything, including starting with our sovereignty. We had to isolate. Our people didn't know that there was an ethnic agenda wearing the garment of religion. Are there no Muslims in Yoruba land? Anyway.
When they say, oh, they want to Islamize, that's the religion they put on it. Why are they killing the indigenous peoples of Zamfara today? So that the governor say, everybody go and get gun. They are Hausa, they are Muslims. Therefore, the reason they are being killed is because they are not Fulani. Fulani won their land. That's what's going on in Niger State. That's what is going on in Katsina, parts of Katsina, Northern Kaduna, all the places where they are killing people. It is first on account of not being full. If you are not Fulani, whether you are Muslim or Christian, you are dead when they come to your space. And so, to that extent, it is this imposition by that invisible virus, invisible, all the while it was the Fulani that was doing what was being done, including the war itself, that they drafted Gowon to stand in front. Wait, no. Let's not use the term illegal. It creates its own problem. It is an illegitimate. It's an illegitimate constitution, and our people need to understand why we say so and the implications. Our people need to understand that it is the union agreement. It is the instrument by which they are locked into this union. So those who are shouting Yoruba nation, those who want independence, those who want freedom from that Nigeria that is choking them to death, 75% of your task, if not more, is in taking down that constitution. If you don't take down that constitution, you are inside that cage. Igbo is in that cage. The last time they tried to break free alone in the name of Biafra, they were beaten down, 3.5 million of them killed. The last time Bogoni said, oh, we can't take it anymore, they beheaded their leader and beat them down. The last time they just said, we can't go anymore, Yaradua unleashed, a military operation against them, and many, even Obasanjo first destroyed OD. What was the quarrel? So at every point in time, two things were happening. The Fulani that is organizing this union of death against all of us in joint venture with the British, you never saw them. Every time Ishekiri suffers, they are told it's Yoruba that caused it. Every time Yoruba suffers, they say it's Igbo that conspired. Every time Jukun or TB is in trouble, they say it is Jukun. So they were playing us one against another, and we never saw them as the ones organizing the commotion that made it impossible for us to discuss our common problems. So what this alliance did was to identify and isolate that monster. Second, what was it that empowered these less than 5 million people? When Buhari came, they were less than 5 million in number. How are they able to hold this territory of 200 million people in absolute brigandage? It was that constitution they managed to impose. And look at the process by which the constitution got imposed. That Gowon set up what he set up. They finished their work, submitted a draft. It was when Gowon took that draft to the Supreme Military Council of the time that Murtala Mohammed, who had been responsible for the coup of July in 1966 on behalf of that caliphate, saw what was, they say, if this becomes the constitution, what was the purpose of the whole war? So it became the immediate reason to remove Gowon from power. It was that draft that would have taken us back to what we agreed, because that was what they did in marrying the two. It's just a matter of control of weapons. The only thing they went to do in Aburi was to put the weapons behind the regions. Everything, the regions already had their autonomy. Awolowo that came back from prison realized that the command structure of the police and the military had been northernized completely. And so he began to send messages to the east, say, we have a problem. If we don't slow down and find a means of putting guns into our own hands, these people can overrun all of us. The same thing that is going on in the east today. Some of our own people didn't listen. Some of the people who went on those errands are still alive. I look up. And so it took all the way, was it not in May of 1967 that they eventually declared the Republic of Biafra? From the July of 1966 that the killings began. It was in all that period, the pushing and pulling of, say, let us find another way so we can have at least the minimal weapons we need to defend ourselves. Some say, oh no, we can't wait. They were killing the Igbos quite all right, in large numbers. So everybody, but even at that, were they satisfied that they had killed enough? They were still planning to come to liquidate all of them. Then they say, okay, let's go and fight. So if we don't put these things in context, nobody will understand why. If anybody will see, if anybody will remember the first speech Awolowo delivered in Majeure when he came back from the prison, when he entered Yoruba land after his years in the prison, nobody could make a better case for self-determination for Eastern Nigeria than what was said in that speech. Say, look, we agreed to be a union of a federation. We agreed to be a union of autonomous regions. All of what we agreed to be had been overtaken by what I'm seeing now. And anybody who is going to resort to force, you remember that in Aburi, which was January of 67,
yeah,
the counter coup happened in July, 29 July 66. By December, all kinds of meetings had happened in between the months, but by end of December, no progress had been made. General Ankara then intervened to say, okay, because there was nowhere anybody could meet in Nigeria anymore. The people from the east will not go to the west will not go to the north. So Nigeria had broken down to all practical purposes. Ankara then said, okay, all of you come and discuss here. And then they discussed and agreed on what to do to go back to what was agreed and to also redistribute the control of weapons, which the government of the North had now put 100% in their own hands. It was that redistribution of weapons that became what they rejected when they came back. Say, if guns enter, everybody will go, because Awolowo was more eager to retrieve Yoruba land from the mess Nigeria had become for everybody. So they didn't want that. They found a way to keep throwing things here, there. They went into the eastern side, the eastern minorities again, the thing they refuse to do to tell you the wickedness of this enterprise called Nigeria. You remember Willis Commission?
Yeah.
That the minorities had come for various reasons. In the north, there were minorities, the ones we call Middle Belt now. In the west, there were minorities, the one that became Midwest. In the east, there were minorities. Now, each of those minorities had, from the north, you remember J.S. Tucker and his Middle Belt movement. They wanted to be separated from the north on account of the Sharia that Ahmadu Bello wanted for northern region. The British found a way to say, okay, no, since the Middle Belt is mostly Christians, you can't impose Sharia. And therefore, they put what they call penal code in place of Sharia so that the non-Muslims can go about their business in the region. So it became a fundamental agreement by which Middle Belt remained a part of northern region, that Sharia should never be contemplated. In the western region, the Dole side of the Benin, the Shekiri, Yoruba, all of them who were also complaining of all kinds of things in western region because they wanted to break the backbone of Awolowo. That thing they refused to do for those minorities in 1957-58. They seized the opportunity of what they were trying to do to subdue Awolowo, to break his kingdom. And so the Midwest that emerged in 1963 was in mischief. Then the one of the East was left. It was in 1966 when Eastern region was going to become a republic of its own. 3 days, 72 hours to the announcement. The Eastern Consultative Assembly had been held. People already agreed that on so day, since in 1 year, we cannot find common ground with this, and they are still killing us, planning to come to invade us. We must then declare ourselves an independent republic. A date was fixed, 30th of May, for the announcement to be made. On the 27th of May, Gowon and his British handlers sat in Lagos, and then that thing that the minorities of the East wanted from Williams Commission, you remember that they came there, Babiri and Co. They now decided to carve them out. That was how River State and the southeastern state that is now Cross River, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, and Delta got cut off from the eastern region of the time, leaving only the east central state in the one they call the dot in circle, which have become the five southeastern states of today. So it was in that, again, the mischief of wanting to break the backbone of that eastern region that the Niger Delta, the eastern minorities were given. So it was that incomplete decolonization that they managed in such a way to create hatred. Decolonization.
This was supposed to be created. It was published then that there should have been three other regions, making 6. The United Middle Belt region, the Midwest, and then the core Calabar Ogoja region. Well, but instead of going through that place, the Federal House of Assembly, as it was called then, decided to push out some information in the papers that Awolowo was a tribalist. He does not want Midwest to be created. But they were not talking of the core or the northern one. So they forced the...
had become a serious problem they couldn't resolve. You remember that it was in May of...
Second day of independence, I found some documents that the agreement was to destroy Awolowo and Western region.
Yes, that was... You remember it was in further pursuit against Awolowo that they suspended. They say he didn't win the election. He went to court. They say, oh, yeah, court agreed with the other side. And then they said he was plotting for how to overthrow them. Yeah. They grabbed him, tried him, and put him in prison. The resistance from that became resistance, suspended the constitution of Western region.
In your position, can you please, if you can, but I will also try, to find the details of that 1959 election is very contentious. I have some papers I wrote on it, but if you can, because I know the details of the
Harold Smith, the British civil servant that
okay,
was
Harold
involved.
Smith, Harold Smith,
He actually
and
Harold
Smith.
Smith.
Yeah,
he gave us his unpublished diary in 2003.
Yeah, I know of that. My friend,
So
my friend interviewed him.
at least the ones he didn't
Mr.
record,
Adeyemi.
you knew where to look for the balance of the details.
Yeah, and
but the ones he witnessed by himself is enough for the purpose, that we only need proof that there were manipulations.
Yeah, and then why I'm asking you to check further, how many constituencies were distributed in the various regions before the election? That will help us.
Yes, they created the constituencies in a manner. You remember they had the census.
Yeah.
In preparation for independence.
Yeah.
At the end of the census, the whole of the population of Nigeria, that northern region that was 3/4 of the land, had only 17%, 17.
That's true. I remember
the entire
it was part of my study at school.
17% to that vast northern region. The rest were by the coastlines, the south, which was eastern and western regions, plus the Lagos Federal Capital. Now you come down to
I want to add this about what you just said about the censor, so that our listener will start to know deeper into what you have been telling us, so that they can pass the message. There was sometime 1994 satellite imaging of population distribution in Africa, so that the population of Southwest and Southeast has the largest concentration of people in Africa. The North was
it is still like that today.
We want to be able to, through you, tell our people, and I will do the same, that we are just
Nigeria. When we say that Nigeria is a scam, when we say that Nigeria is a scam and a fraud, is because of these verified details of manipulation and falsehood upon which we are building a union. You come down to when they saw it was 17%, in order to justify the 55%, they already made up their mind, so that at any point in time, even if the East and West, that's even if the whole of the South will combine, they cannot come to more than 45% of voting rights in terms of a place of decision. They are not bothered with the population. What did they do? They padded what they got from the North and extracted, they moved from what they got from the South and use it to pad. So the South was shrunk into what could become 45%, and the North was expanded from 17% to what could become 55%. And that was the basis upon which the constituencies were created. And we have been building on extrapolations from that time to date. That's why Nigeria doesn't have a database.
What I found it really interests you. The Federal Office of Statistics, when they gave the percentages of people distribution in Nigeria, and when I calculated it, it showed that the South had almost 57% of the people. That the federal, you see, they are clever by half, but it is us knowing the facts that are not telling our people. We should now. I got it from Federal Office of Statistics.
The renegades of the South and the Middle Belt, who go to swear to defend and uphold the constitution by which we are made slaves, by which we are being slaughtered, and we're there watching them. If they go to election in 2023, at the end of the entire commotion, only about 1,500 people, that's 1,500 people will be sworn in. One president, one vice president, 109 senators, 36 governors. Put all of them together, the ones who will be sworn in as having won election, it's not more than 1,500 people. And so, if on account of this 1,500 people, because that's what it will boil down to, every other person will be one who tried, who failed. But if on account of this 1,500 people, 150 million people are now to be put in danger. I'm talking about our alliance of South and Middle Belt.
Yeah.
My concern is not for Sokoto and Kano and Maiduguri. However, they managed to accept the Sharia that was imposed simultaneously across 12 contiguous. Go back to our map.
Yeah,
the basis of that map of the alliance is the fact that 12 contiguous states simultaneously imposed Sharia in year 2000, just as we were a few months into the so-called return to democracy in 1999. And so when we looked at it, even as bad and as flawed as that constitution is, it has an express prohibition of a state religion in section 10. It says the government of the federation or that of a state shall not adopt any state religion. Full stop. That's the shortest section of the whole in the whole constitution. Now, these 12 states, knowing about this provision, going to the House of Assembly to introduce Sharia and then passing it and their governors signing into law and setting up Hizbah to enforce it, we took it as their democratic exercise of their right to self-determination. They knew we had not made any constitution. They made alternative arrangement to themselves and seceded from a secular union.
They
what
have.
I'm telling you now is what we
told
international stakeholders. They seceded from a secular union because that secularity is foundational. Having destroyed our federation into unitarism, they again seceded from a secular union. And so we said, we're not going to quarrel with them since they are in their space and their right to self-determination is inalienable. We can't come and tell them, please, don't go do that. Come, let's do democracy, because their Sharia is mutually exclusive with the democracy we prefer. Their Sharia is mutually exclusive with the sanctity of human life, because as adherents of Sharia, they owe it a duty of faith to kill you, the infidel. That duty will never go away. It doesn't matter how many PhDs they have. Look at Pantami. Look at Gumi. Is Gumi not a medical doctor? Why would he be the champion of people who are slaughtering people all over the land? And so that adoption of Sharia across those 12 states, simultaneous, contiguous, became basis. It was really at that point that they ended our union for good. Every day we endured that union from year 2000, February 2000, to now was our own doing.
Yeah.
Because those who ought to be listening are not listening. They are blowing siren. Yeah, every month they go and share.
Because I remember those maps, I had that same map, but it exclusively did in the two parts. The Nigeria divided nation and the Sharia states was marked. And I wrote a note below it that we already have two countries in Nigeria. And it's like they have an Arewa Islamic Republic currently in Nigeria, waiting for the time they will finally go when we are wise in the south. That was my conclusion.
Now there's an important leg of that entire undertaking, the Middle Belt. You saw that they had their own fathers of the time who struggled. In fact, they were the first to be slaughtered in such numbers on account of trying to resist. Samuel Otom was on Arise TV this morning, the governor of Benue. You know it was the thief that killed Uthman Danfodio as they were rampaging southwards. The Fulani have never forgiven that. That's why they are putting the thief people under siege. And when you take that map, the one that is broken into four, is where, as an alliance that had to take down the 1999 constitution, the first map isolates the Sharia belt into their own, whatever. They've gone with their sovereignty. The rest of us are in that alliance of South and Middle Belt, further delineated in 3 blocks, so that the international stakeholders, the international community that had to manage aspects of this, because they have stakes here, whether we like it or not. They are not going to create 350 countries because Nigeria was not holding. Therefore, we had to do the task of Yoruba side has no problem at all because they are this one language. Whatever be the quarrel between Egba and Egbado or Ekiti and Ijesha, it's easy to resolve. Therefore, we remove the Sharia belt to tell you how we came to that map that is broken into 4. We remove the Sharia belt as having left our union. The constitution that brought all of us together, that's including them, is a forgery and a fraud we have rejected. And so, once that constitution is out of the way, we have no union. That's the implication of that preamble. If it is a lie that we never submitted our sovereignty, if we prove that lie in whichever way, it doesn't have to be court. We went to court in 2007 to make a statement of the situation to the whole world, not because we were waiting for any judge, because it's a fraud on its face. We do not require any court pronouncement to deal with that matter.
At all.
Nigeria is hanging onto like a check you did not sign, and somebody takes it to the bank to cash for money. That is the status of this instrument. On account of the content, not what we allege. It says that we, the people, have solemnly resolved. Then it comes into the decree number 24 that imposed it to also say that they formed a committee headed by some fellow, Nikki Toby, that went around in some beer parlor places and discussing with passers-by, and most of those people say they want a return to 1979. Is that not their claim? It's in black and white. And therefore, that the report of the committee came back to Supreme Military Council or Armed Forces Ruling Council. Armed Forces Ruling Council have accepted that report, subject to such amendments as they deem necessary. And therefore, that report is attached to this decree as a schedule to be called the 1999 Constitution. That is their own admission of how they came about the document we refer to as 1999 Constitution. But there was an instruction in subsection 3. It's a 2-section decree. I want the lawyers from the South and the Middle Belt, whether they are senior advocates or professors of law, to listen carefully that the decree number 24 of 1999, by which the Constitution was imposed by Salama Baka, had an instruction in subsection 3 of the section 1. That instruction is that the federal government printer had to omit that decree when it is printing the Constitution. That is, let there be no reference to decree number 24, so that the Constitution can start with the falsehood that we, the people, have solemnly resolved to live together and therefore have made this Constitution. It was by divine intervention that the federal government printer printed that decree into the document that was gazetted and given to the diplomats. So the key to our escape from that prison compound had been handed to us since 1999. And we began to challenge the document right from that point to say, we never met, we never agreed on anything. You can't put our signature on this and it remain the basis of the union, in which you have seized all our assets and all our right to work anything for ourselves.
Now, there's something, I would like to call it a digression on something that happened was it 2 years ago when the governor of Kaduna State was to address the Nigerian Bar Association, which caused a furore, yeah. And when the northern arm of the Nigerian Bar Association broke away. Yeah. Now, I want to ask you, by implication, by the breaking away of the Nigerian Bar Association, does the southern branch has the right to continue to bear Nigerian Bar Association when the other arm?
Let us.
Is it not a technical way of breaking up the country?
Let us. The lawyers in the land the lawyers in the land, because I hold them responsible for this carnage going on. All the lawyers across Nigeria, any lawyer in Nigeria who is not already a champion of ending this fraud of 1999 is complicit in what is happening to the rest of everybody, because they are the ones who should know that you cannot build a union on such a falsehood, such a patent falsehood, that I submitted my land, that you submitted your land, that they just submitted their land and all their assets into a union. And then we are carrying it about, and lawyers are actually quoting it to say constitution does not say. Which constitution? Then you turn down to the National Assembly that say, okay, we are meant for you, come all of you who are heavy laden. How did you come to what? How did you come about the National Assembly of 36 states, in which there are 3 senators per state, in which the House of Representatives is delineated on account of 7 and 4 local government areas that were created indiscriminately, and people who have education actually go to swear to defend and uphold such an instrument, despite all of what we have tried to tell them about the source of our misery being that constitution. Whether we are killed in the Middle Belt or in our war, whether our port of Lagos is seized or the oil and gas of Niger Delta is seized, it is that constitution. The corruption we talk about, let me shock you, sir. In section 6, subsection 6C of this constitution, all of the benefits that are attached to the citizen is withdrawn. There's a whole chapter 2. There's a whole chapter of this constitution, chapter 2, that spells out every good thing you can imagine for the citizen. It is in that chapter 2 that you see the primary responsibility of government being the welfare and security of citizens. It is in that chapter 2 that equal treatment for all is guaranteed. It's in that chapter 2 that government promises all kinds of healthcare, education, housing, and general environment to thrive. But section 6, subsection 6C of this constitution more or less voids the whole of chapter 2 in making it discretionary to those in government house to do or not to do, because it removes the jurisdiction of the court concerning any promise made in chapter 2.
What?
In black and white, section 6, subsection 6C. Do you know the implication of that? All of your rights as citizen, all of those things that government said they will do for you is discretionary to them, and you have no legal claim, no claim against them if they don't do. Meaning that they do not owe you any obligation for school or housing or healthcare or security or welfare. Everything that you expect as citizen is withdrawn in black and white. Then it comes to sections 121, 122 for governors, section 81, 82 for the president, and give the spare key to the treasury to the heads of the executive branch. The president of Nigeria is in a position to take all the money that comes into the treasury and spend it anyhow he likes without reference to National Assembly. Everything you see about appropriation and how they spend, see how it works. Section 81 says the president must go to National Assembly to obtain permission to spend any money from the consolidated revenue account. That's all the monies of federal government, that of the government, has to go into that account. That's section 81. Section 82 then says that while the legislature is debating the appropriation, that the president is authorized to run government, spending money, but subject to 50% of what was appropriated the year before. That is, whatever be the figure, not what was spent, what was appropriated. You've been hearing about Ghana Must Go, that they use in passing, budgets. See how it works. The president knows for sure that he will not get more than 100 billion for education, to spend for education. Because of that provision and the intention to loot, In the appropriation, he will put 300 billion for education. Between him and the National Assembly, they know that no more than 100 billion can come. If there's windfall for oil, maybe it will become 150 billion or one whatever. But they put 300 billion. The National Assembly then takes their own part of the loot up front by way of those Ghana must go you've been hearing around the appropriation time. So that the president has a threshold of 300 billion to work with in the following, in the year of for the appropriation. What does that mean? Perchance 50 billion comes or 100 billion comes, he has up to 150 billion he can take without reference to National Assembly.
Well, on this point, I'm very, very grateful for your patience to explain.
Let me just land this somewhere. Let me land this somewhere.
Yeah.
Let me land this somewhere.
Okay.
As it is for education, so it is for defense, so it is for healthcare and housing. So the president that wants to steal just only has to prepare his budget, pass the appropriate quantums of money to those who have to pass to sign off on in the National Assembly, give them their own share up front, and then he has the treasury at his disposal for that whole year. The following year, they do the same.
How do we now describe the functionality of the country we are discussing? Is it a mafia or
it's a criminal enterprise? That's why we call it. When we call it a criminal, these people know exactly what they want.
People who have given up their sovereignty, do they have to prop up this criminality?
That's what they're doing. Every time they go to election, they are saying, please, we want it so. Come and take another 4 years. Carry on. We are happy with it.
God.
You are being slaughtered. You are being rendered, paupers. Your asset is your economic asset that were taken that made Nigeria the poverty capital of the world.
And my eminent gentleman, I have to stop you here, Minister Tony Nnadi.
It doesn't stop there. You then have the immunity clause in Section 308.
Yes.
So they don't owe you any obligation
to account
in Section 606 for any kind of thing for you. Your own share of the social contract, which is the Constitution, your own share as citizen is taken away in black and white. The spare key to the treasury is handed over to the president and the 36 governors. Then all of them have immunity in Section 308, so that you can't question them for whatever they do. And as they're leaving office, the kind of people they put there are people who go to prison if their tenure is proved. And so at what point are you going to get anything from them other than what? So the Constitution creates the corruption we're talking about.
I know,
and protects the beneficiaries.
We have to do this program once more, because I believe our listeners are in rapt attention, listening to how we have sold ourselves out to this criminality called the government. We need to get ourselves out of this. And I'm very, very happy that I have you on this program today. And I believe we will have to do what some leaders call a return match. Well, I don't particularly like that statement.
Next, what we will do, we've set out what the problem is.
Yeah.
In the next time we meet, we'll go into what we have to do to topple that constitution.
Exactly.
All of what we need to do to end the life of that
constitution. That's exactly where I'm
The only reason it's still standing is that our people are not listening, and they are marching with all vigor to their death, because the Fulani whom we have defeated
with the AK-47.
the Fulani, if we take down this, if we stop the journey to this election now, on account of having repudiated that constitution, the union of Nigeria is at an end, and the 200 years reign of the Fulani is at an end. Therefore, it is by dragging us to election, that's the only avenue left for them. That's why they are moving, they are, rallying everything they can find into how election can hold, so that they can save that constitution. So if we go to election with them, they have won, no matter who they declare the winner, even if it's Peter Obi. If this constitution survives, the Nigeria that belongs to the Fulani has been saved, and they will continue their conquest drive against the rest of us, standing on that constitution, the same way they did when Obasanjo was there and when Jonathan was there. And so, if we choose to die, we proceed to election with them. If we choose to leave, we take down this election, and then that takes down the constitution. I'm sure you've seen Domino 2, where we say election goes down, the constitution goes down, and the union anchored on that constitution goes down. That's what we spent the last 22 years getting ready to do.
We'll be talking about the options that is available to us in the next program. I believe you should take a glass of water too. Yeah, because you really opened up the whole thing. I won't call it a worm, but it's the reality of events that some of us are willfully blind to. Even some of us who are highly scholarly seem not to have looked deep, sit back and say, why is this happening? Look at Lagos, no electricity. Since about 1969, it has become flip-flop. Now it is so worse. And how do you expect industries to stay? That's exactly what Tony Nnadi has been trying to tell us. We have complicitly allowed ourselves to allow a government of criminality to rule us. Thank you very much, for listeners. On this note, we'll sign out. Tony, do you have any greetings to tell our listeners before I call time? Thank you very much.
I will thank the listeners. It's not an easy thing to make out almost 2 hours to listen to this kind of thing, but it's a matter of life and death. God has given us the mechanism by which we can free ourselves. And we worked it quietly through the last 22 years. It was like submarine sailing. All the things you heard about Biafra Republic or the old nation here were just, decoys, speedboat on top of water. The submarine called NINAS has sailed into the enemy harbor. There's nothing the Fulani is going to be able to do about it. That constitution is gone if we do the little that is left for us to do to stop them from going to renew the life of that constitution in February of 2023. We have 7 months to leave the prison gate, to leave the prison compound. If we choose to stay back and allow them to renew our bondage in 2023 because a few of our cousins or brothers will become president, or it will then be that we have submitted ourselves to be slaughtered. They are on their conquest mission because they know that constitution has been defeated. They are trying to conquer so that the basis of their being in Yoruba land will be that they conquered Yoruba people or Ijo people or Igbo people. Since they can no longer rely on the title deed, we have delegitimized. That's what we have isolated them in terms of geography. We have delegitimized the instrument upon which by which they have been holding us in bondage. We have also defeated them in the international arena when we showed the international community that they are working with ISIS to overrun us.
Open up the next sentence, our next program. I will remember that we are in bondage if we continue to be with them. Thank you all for listening to us. And once again, I thank Tony for his eloquent rendition and deposition of everything that we all need to know. We should all wake up, pass the message down the line to everyone, even to the little child that is still sucking the breast of her mother, that she doesn't want or he doesn't want to be in prison. Thank you very much. And thank you. This is Cleveland TV. I've been having on my guest list a very amiable and important legal practitioner, Tony Nnadi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, viewers. Goodbye.
Bye.